Hey everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to another episode of the Summer Transition Series. A little bit about how this is going to work. So if you haven't tuned in before, these webinars are one-way audio, so you'll be able to hear us. We unfortunately will not be able to hear you. Instead, we ask that you submit questions through the Q&A box, and then myself and Nicole, who also works with New Student Program, will be moderating the session, so we'll ask the questions for you. So if you have questions that you would love to have answered, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box.
If you have AP credit, there's all kinds of different things on the advising website about where you would place into chemistry and math. As you know, you also need to take Writing 101 or a seminar. As I said, most people will start with math and or chemistry, but you do not need to dive right into the pre-med courses. You may find that there is something else that you want to take. Also with the sociology and psychology prerequisites now, as well as the fact that you need Writing 101 and you need writing for medical school, there's lots of options and lots of ways to get a jump on that track.
Okay. We have a couple questions about engineering. So how do pre-med courses fit in with the engineering requirements if you're in prep? Can some courses count as pre-med and engineering?
Absolutely. Although technically, if you look at it, it can be a little confusing because we are, the Office of Health Professions Advising is technically under Trinity, but we work with everybody and we're very familiar with the Pratt curriculum and how it fits. There is information on our website, which, by the way, if you haven't looked at it yet, is prehealth.duke.edu. The best place for you to look is prehealth.duke.edu/prepare. That's going to show you all of these pre-med courses, also some prescribed curricula, including what to do if you're Trinity, what to do if you're Pratt, what to do if you have certain AP credits, all of that good stuff. But yes, there are lots of courses that can count for both pre-med and engineering. One little caveat that I would like to add is that every year medical schools change things a little bit. We will put information out there as we know it. A lot of people will ask about AP. We put in AP credit as we know it. However, I can't guarantee you that in a few years, a certain medical school may not change what their requirements are. So that's something you want to keep in mind, is that it's still a little bit unknown. One of the big ones is that UCLA used to be kind of notorious as not taking any APs. They've lessened their restrictions a little bit. The other thing to know is that more and more schools are recommending, if not requiring, humanities and social sciences. There's a certain school down the road a little bit, a little light blue school, shall we say. UNC has recently announced that starting for fall 2021, all pre-med students or all students applying to UNC's med school must have not only the regular science pre-medical courses, but at least 3 courses in humanities and 3 courses in social sciences. If you are an engineering student, this means you're going to have to be really, really particular and make sure that you take those classes within your elective so that you don't find that you're not even eligible to apply to UNC.
Staying along the engineering vein, are there specific pre-med prereqs that I should fulfill in my first year?
Yes, similar to the answer that I gave a few minutes ago about chemistry, that's what you want to start looking at. Specifically, if you go to prehealth.duke.edu/prepare, you'll be able to see what a typical Trinity curricula could look like and what the Pratt curricula could look like, including what classes that we recommend you take.
Great, thank you. All right, next question. If taking a gap year between Duke and medical school, do most students conduct research or do they do other things?
They do a little bit of everything. In some ways, a gap year is truly a gap year because, as I said, you send in your application on June 1st. So a misconception can be that you can use that year to make up any deficiencies in your application. And too late, your application is already in. You can use that year to build up strengths that you already have and enhance those things. These are things that you can then talk about in your interviews. However, if there's something that is a deficit, that's when we would recommend to you that you would take some time to have that before you apply. Also, we will work with you as alumni. As long as you need help, we can still work with you. So that's one of the great things about coming to Duke is that our office is open to you as long as you need it. The vast majority of people do conduct research. There are lots and lots of one-year clinical research positions available, both here at Duke. NIH has a lot of programs, a lot of other research institutions and university hospitals do. There's lots of things to do, but at the same time, we have people who want to work in business or for a startup for a year or two. We have people that want to work in the arts. Anything that you want to do, you can. We have people that want to teach. Like I said, it's up to you. Everybody's narrative is a little bit different. So what works for one person is not necessarily the right answer for you.
Next question is, what type of pre-health students receive a committee letter from the Duke staff? Is there a GPA cutoff or a certain profile that the university likes to see?
No, we have no prerequisite GPA or anything else. I am in the middle of committee letter writing season right now. I was just telling other people about that. We write a letter for anyone that requests it. Certainly, your letter is going to be more robust if we are able to highlight lots of strengths. The committee letter process is kind of a mystery to a lot of people. In scientific terms, the committee letter is the abstract of your application. We are going to give the highlights, the thesis of your narrative, kind of tell the medical schools who you are as a cover page. We also, as I said, highlight your strengths. The mission of our office is not to be the gatekeeper. We are open to everyone, and we know that everyone has a different path. The committee letter is going to highlight your strengths. We want to highlight all the classes that you've taken and you've done well in, the classes that perhaps you took at the graduate level, anytime that you have overloaded. We will also talk about why you chose certain classes and you have a certain academic theme to your application. We will also highlight your strengths outside of the classroom, and that's something I haven't really talked about yet, is the expectations of medical schools outside of the classroom. They kind of fall into three categories. And I know I'm switching gears, but at the same time, this is something we address on the committee letter. Outside of the classroom, 1, they want to see research. 2, community service. 3, clinical experience. I like to think of it this way. Your freshman year, you can start with community service. You don't need any experience to start with community service. You don't need any skills. You can start gaining some of those experiences. Go to the student activities fair, find some things that you're excited about, get involved. That's what freshman year is for. By sophomore year, you can start building on that. In fact, at Duke, we do not allow freshmen to shadow or work at the Duke Hospital, so you have to wait until you're a sophomore anyway. There's 2 different types of clinical experiences that you should have for medical school. One is shadowing, and the second is hands-on clinical care with patients. You do not need to be certified as a medical assistant or anything like that. Working directly with patients by working in a waiting room at the hospital or helping them find their rooms at the reception desk, that kind of thing, is very helpful. Perhaps you are interested in art and you want to travel to patients' rooms with an instrument or with some art supplies. There's lots of ways to get involved, and those are actually also on our website, So you can take a look there. Like I said, wait till your sophomore year. You can start getting excited about them. But the idea is that we want you to keep up with that transition, and then by your sophomore year, you can gain shadowing and clinical experiences. Then, by your junior year, sometimes it's before that, this is just a typical timeline. By your junior year, you want to build up your research portfolio. By that time, you have met faculty members, you have built some basic science skills, perhaps you have had a job in a lab at that point, but you haven't yet been able to take the lead on a project or come up with your own hypothesis. Junior into senior year is the time that you can enhance your research portfolio. So then by the time that you're going to apply, you have a breadth and a depth within all three of those areas on top of all of your academic requirements, taking the MCAT, etc. That's why I think if you think about it, building it in small steps, it doesn't feel quite so overwhelming.
We had a follow-up question. Is shadowing or volunteering at a hospital over the summer before my sophomore year encouraged?
Before your sophomore year, absolutely. You can do anything you want over your summers. You can do some shadowing, whether it's at Duke or at home or somewhere else. Duke Engage is a very popular thing for people to do. It does not even have to be health-related Duke Engage because it is community service and community activism. Some people want to engage in research. Some people find all kinds of other opportunities. Whatever fits your narrative is correct. So whatever you're interested in, go for it.
Speaking of summer, well, I guess it can happen more than just summer, but specifically for study abroad, can pre-med requirements be completed while studying abroad?
Most medical schools require that your pre-med science courses be taken in the U.S. and be taken with a lab. Going along with that, some people may ask, can I take a science course without a lab, or can I take a science course online? Most of the time the answer is no. There are a few medical schools that may accept this, but most of them won't. Another thing that's a little bit confusing is that there are a few medical schools, Duke is actually one of them, that are, instead of listing a list of courses that you have to take, they're talking about competencies. You don't have to take these chemistry classes, but you have to have competency in chemistry. Well, this is true. However, how do you show you have competency in chemistry? By taking chemistry courses at a hard institution and doing well in them. Will they take people who perhaps haven't taken them? Probably, but will you increase your chances of getting in if you have those courses the way that they are expecting them? Absolutely.
Great.
Another thing that you should know is that you can take your pre-medical courses over the summer if you choose. Some people may even decide to take them at home. Again, you should take them with a lab, and you should take them at a 4-year institution rather than at a community college. We won't debate that merit right now. We'll just say that that's what medical schools love. Especially in light of the number of courses that you have to take, and especially if you want to participate in study abroad or you want to apply as a junior, absolutely you can take things over the summer.
We had 2 questions come up about the focus program. So if I'm doing a focus program, 1, how should I go about signing up for pre-med requirements? And 2, can the seminar credit for pre-med come from a focus program?
Pre-med does not have a seminar requirement, but you can absolutely take the seminar that you take at focus counts as the seminar that you need as a freshman, because you will need either a seminar or writing 101, and then the following semester the opposite. If your focus program is within a subject area that is a pre-medical subject, such as biology, chemistry, physics, math, although that credit will not be a pre-med credit, your grade will count towards your science and math GPA.
All right, next question. Do you have any recommendations as to when students should be starting and ending a foreign language?
This is kind of not a pre-med question. I also am an advisor for incoming undeclared students, and this would be my same answer whether you would ask it in math or in foreign language. Both of those are kind of use it or lose it skills. If you are building upon a foreign language or something else that you have studied previously, my suggestion to you is to do it sooner rather than later, because if you don't speak French for a few years, you forget. If you are starting over and you're starting at the 101 level, you can do it anytime you want. Some people find that they want to do it intensive later. Other people find that they want to get it out of the way so that they can concentrate on some of the more advanced science courses. So there's no one right answer. Think about what you want to gain and think about the path that you are on, and that is the right answer.
It is nice. All right, the next question asks, can the same course count for multiple pre-med requirements? For example, would you be able to count BME 244L for both biology and statistics?
Yes, that is actually one that does. If you go on to prehealth.duke.edu, it will outline all of the different courses, and there are some places that you can double dip. Some people also ask about there's a psychology course that counts for psychology and for statistics. So does that count for both for pre-med? Why, yes, it does. So there are lots of different ways that you can do that. And like I said, it's all outlined on prehealth.duke.edu, probably most specifically under prepare. One of the things that I talked about a minute ago was the science and math GPA. This is also kind of known as the BCPM, biology, chemistry, physics, and math. There's a few other subjects in there. On our website, again, we list what courses count, but not only what subject areas, but we've actually gone through and told you what Duke courses will count for your BCPM. If you go to our website, it might be a little bit dirty to have used our website because it's under the apply section. You don't really have to worry about that just yet. But if you Google Duke BCPM courses, you'll probably be able to find it. It should be one of the top few hits. Again, we put in all of those that count. Some BME courses count, and some advanced courses count. Some psychology courses count. We didn't decide this, by the way. This comes from the AAMC, the medical schools have decided this. Essentially, if the curriculum for a course is at least 50% within one of the BCPM subjects, it will count as a BCPM course. We have gone through the syllabi for these courses, and that's why these specific Duke courses are listed there.
Next question. I heard that if you jumped straight into organic chemistry, you wouldn't be meeting the pre-dental requirements. Is this true?
Not necessarily. If you jump straight into organic chemistry, this is probably because you have credit for both Chem 20 and Chem 21. And we have actually a letter that we send to dental schools, medical schools. Stuff. Sometimes people have a question about APs because, as you probably are familiar, Duke will give you credit towards your 34 needed for graduation for for 2 credits, 2 APs, that's it. However, if you send your AP course sheet to Duke and they have all of the courses listed, although only 2 of them will count towards your graduation, as many of them as you want will count towards fulfilling pre-med, because pre-med is not something that shows up specifically on your transcript. It's not a focus, it's not a minor, it's not a certificate, it's just a thing that you're doing. And therefore, anything that you have AP credit for will count towards those pre-meds, even if you don't, quote unquote, get credit for that at Duke.
Okay, so my computer crashed in the middle of that beautiful answer.
Okay.
Can we, if you're still with us and if you can hear us, can you just give me like a quick, yeah, I can hear you in the Q&A box? Thanks. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, good.
Okay. So we got a message that said the connection broke just as you were answering. Could you give like a quick recap?
I don't remember what I did.
I will re-ask the question. It's cool.
Orgo, is that Orgo?
Yes, the question was dispelling the myth that if you jump straight into organic chemistry, you would not be meeting the pre-dental requirements.
That is incorrect. If you jump straight into Orgo, you can still fulfill pre-dental and or pre-medical requirements. Again, if you check out prehealth.duke.edu, you can take a look at what all of the different options are for which chemistry you start with. We send a letter to any school that you are applying to, medical school or dental school, that may not be familiar with the Duke curriculum, to know that you have credit for both Chem 20 and 21 through AP, and therefore you can jump right into organic. All they really want to know is, are you ready to take the exam, either the DAT or the MCAT, and are you ready to, do you have a firm grasp of that material? One of the other things that I had been talking about is AP credit. And as you are probably familiar, Duke only accepts 2 AP credits towards your 34 needed for graduation. However, if you have taken more than that, and you can send Duke all of your AP information, all of those can count towards pre-med. For example, if you have chemistry and you have biology and you have physics, all of those will count towards pre-med, since it's not something that shows up on your transcript. It's not a concentration or a minor. It's its own special kind of category. So absolutely take those, send us those that AP information, because it can help you with your placement. It can also help you down the line with having some of those pre-meds fulfilled.
All right, kind of another myth about Orgo. Since you're able to skip into Orgo with AP credit, do you suggest that we do? I know it's not a pre-med specific question, but I've heard very mixed opinions about it.
That, like so many other things, it depends. If you have credit for chemistry 20, Chem 20 and Chem 21 because of your AP, IB, etc. score, then Duke Chemistry's department has said that you have the wherewithal to take those courses, so you can take them. Some people feel like they're a little bit nervous and maybe they want to take Chem 110 instead. It's up to you. Take a look at the placement requirements and decide where you feel confident. I will tell my students, I tend to be a more conservative advisor. If you are scared and you are not sure that you're ready for that, I tend to tell you, go ahead and go with the lower one, because it's much easier to take a course at a later time than it is to come back from a lower grade that's going to be part of your GPA forever. However, you haven't taken college courses yet. Maybe you're going to do great in it. If you feel confident about it, go ahead and take it. I don't want to hear that you could have done it and you didn't take that chance. You know yourself and you know your confidence better than I do. I haven't met any of you yet.
Great. We have a question about the MCAT. So when do you take the MCAT, and this asks how are Duke students prepared for the MCAT? So maybe that, and also like how do you prepare for it?
Sure. The MCAT is in fact a subject area test. So you do have to study for it. You need to take the courses required before you take the MCAT. Sometimes people don't know that. It's not like the SAT where you don't have to have any specific knowledge. You have to have preparation. The MCAT, you need both. For that reason, we suggest to people that not only have you taken the prerequisite courses, but you give yourself at least 3 months and 300 hours to study for the test. There are a lot of different ways that people can prepare. Some of them want to go with a commercial thing like Kaplan or Princeton Review. If one of those test prep programs was absolutely the best and worked for all students, we'd have already marched ourselves over to the Allen building and told them they have to provide this for all Duke students, because they listen to me when I do that. It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, some of the programs we've had students do them and they do increase their scores dramatically. Others don't. Especially by the time you take the MCAT, you're going to be more familiar with your learning style. We also have resources here through the Academic Resource Center, known as the ARC, A-R-C. You can go to them and they'll counsel you on the type of learner that you are. They'll counsel you on some of the best ways to prepare for the MCAT. And in fact, we have a new person over there who is helping pre-med students get ready for the MCAT. Some people do self-study, and some of them do great after self-studying. So again, everybody's path is a little bit different. If you are looking to, when you are looking to apply to medical school, you should have, we recommend that you have the MCAT before you apply, because if you have your MCAT score, you're going to know what kinds of schools you should be looking at. You can concentrate on filling out those applications and getting ready rather than studying. For that reason, we recommend that you take the MCAT usually in January of the year that you want to apply, which would really mean if you don't want to take a gap year, that's January of your junior year. So you can see that's not a lot of time. Some people will take it later, but we want you to remember all of the other things that are happening in your life. If you take it in March, that's spring break. So you're going to give up your spring break to study. If you take it later as a senior, will you be working on a thesis project for your graduation with distinction? You want to balance all of these things, so it's good to have kind of this roadmap in mind. Often what we do is say, what year do you want to start? Now let's work backwards. When do you need to have your application? When do you need to have your MCAT? When do you need to have all of these courses done?
Awesome. Next question is for research during your junior year, which you've already talked about a little bit. Do students usually lead the research projects, or is just participating in them sufficient? What does that look like?
It depends on the student and how far they are along in their scientific preparation. Some people will start in a lab as a freshman or a sophomore, and they'll just be kind of a lab assistant helping out with cleaning and prepping specimens and that kind of thing. Sometimes they will work their way up within that lab. They're getting an idea of what the subject area is, and they'll come up with their own hypothesis or their own question they want to ask based upon what they know. Sometimes people get involved because they have a hypothesis, so they've sought out a lab that might help them fill that. Something else that's really important to keep in mind is research does not have to take place in a lab. Research is in every subject area. If you are interested in psychology, if you're interested in social sciences, Research can take various forms. It can be survey research. If you are a history major and you want to, your research takes place maybe in a foreign country, or maybe it takes place in a library. Keep in mind what medical schools want to see when they see research is, can you ask a question or solve a problem using the scientific method? There's lots of ways for undergrads to get involved at Duke. We have an office for undergraduate research. We also have great programs like BASS Connections. That's one where a lot of students will get involved. BASS Connections is an interdisciplinary undergraduate research team, and they have all kinds of different BASS Connections questions and projects each year. Sometimes they are scientific, sometimes they have a little combination of things, all kinds of different things, and these are all undergrad-led and undergrad-directed. Then BASS Connections also has the option for those who have started a research project with the BASS Connections team and want to continue it or do something a little bit slightly off from there, and there's even funding available.
All right, we have a question. Is working in a medical-related job, such as being an EMT, something that is helpful for medical school applications?
Absolutely. Any kind of medically related job is a great idea. It is not required. You don't have to get your EMT certification to apply to medical school. Also, getting your EMT certification is great, but getting your EMT certification and then doing something with it where you're actually helping patients is even better. There is an EMT group here on campus, the Duke EMS, and they do a lot of work with the hospital. They do a lot of outreach with the community as well, teaching CPR classes and things like that. So absolutely, it's a great way to get involved. Again, though, you don't necessarily have to have certification. You can volunteer at a hospital with little to no skills and experience. You can volunteer at other places. Sometimes people ask about places that are kind of a hybrid. They're sort of a clinical setting, but not really, like a nursing home or at Ronald McDonald House. Should I volunteer there? Yes. You can volunteer anywhere you want to show that you are interested in the community. When it comes to whether this counts as clinical or not, that kind of depends on what you do. If you are sitting at the old folks' home playing bingo, great community service project, probably not super clinical. Whereas if you are helping distribute and the meals, and then you're helping people eat them, and you are talking to them about dietary requirements and things like that, that takes on a little bit more of a clinical feel. So it just depends on what you do there. When it comes to community service as well, you don't have to have it doesn't have to be medically related. You do need clinical service as well, but that other community service can come from anywhere. If you're really excited about the environment, so you want to do an Eno River cleanup, if you volunteer with Habitat for Humanity, if you tutor at the Emily K Center, all of these things are things that medical schools want to see. Medicine is a career of service, and that's one of these that you understand that you're willing to give yourself in service to others.
Great. Let's see. Next question. What is a science and math GPA, and how do we know which classes count for that?
For those of you who didn't hear that before, your science and math GPA is also known as your BCPM, which is the biology, chemistry, physics, and math. Sorry, I said it too fast. There are other subjects that count for that as well. If you look it up on our website, it's actually under the apply section, because you don't need to worry about your science and math GPA until it's time to apply. You can see what courses count for that. Any course that has at least 50% of its syllabus and of its content within one of those areas counts as a BCPM course.
Next question, you touched on it a little bit earlier. You talked about how whatever fits whatever fits that individual student's narrative and interest, that should be the field of study, and that there's not one specific major for pre-med. This student asks, is there a most common major that students following the pre-med suggested courses declare? And are there certain majors that will help you fulfill the pre-med requirements more quickly?
Yes. The most common major is probably biology. That doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It just means biology is the one we see the most. One thing that I like to joke, and chemistry is also common. Neuroscience is very popular. But like I said, it can be anything. I hate telling students this because then they think they have to major in biology, and that's already a misconception. There are some majors that lend themselves to being a little bit, quote unquote, easier to fit in with the pre-med requirements because if you major in history, none of the pre-med requirements count towards history. But if you're majoring in biology or chemistry, a lot of them do. So it just comes down to what courses are required. One of the other things that I like to point out is unless you have a lot of APs when you are coming in, if you fulfill all of the pre-med prerequisites at Duke, meaning you have taken 2 chemistry, 2 organic chemistries, and biochem here at Duke, you get a free.
We're back, and we're going to hear more about the gift that Megan was just talking about.
All right. So one of the things I like to tell people is that if you are taking all of your pre-medical prerequisites at Duke, so therefore you take 2 chemistry, 2 organic chemistries, and biochem at Duke, you get a free gift with purchase. You've taken 5 chemistry courses, and you get automatically a chemistry minor. Yeah, so that is absolutely the most common thing that I see when people are applying to medical school because obviously if they have done all of that coursework because they haven't had APs and that kind of thing, they're going to have that chemistry minor on there.
Speaking of applying to med school, is there a preference given to students applying to Duke Medical School that went to Duke for undergrad?
I would not describe it as a preference. However, the most common medical school that Duke graduates go to is Duke. The most represented undergraduate school at Duke Medical School is Duke. So there is a large correlation there. The Duke Medical School admissions office is very familiar with the labs that you have worked with. They may even know some of the faculty members that may be writing for you, etc. However, so are many other medical schools. My background, for those of you who didn't already Google me, my background is that I was actually the director of admissions at a medical school before I came down to Duke. So I was already, before I came here, I knew what Duke Engage was. I knew what Back Connections was. I also read conduct reports, so I knew what LDOC was. But the big medical schools get lots of Duke applications, and therefore they're very familiar, and there are a lot of Duke students at a lot of medical schools. Commonly, I think our top, it varies from year to year what our top medical schools are, the most students are enrolling at them. Duke is almost always number 1. UNC is up there, UVA is up there, Harvard is up there, Baylor, Miami, Georgetown. The exact ranking can vary year to year, but most of those are always in kind of the top 10 for most represented students coming from Duke.
Is there any disadvantage to taking a course that combines 2 pre-med requirements? For example, the class you mentioned previously that combines biology and stat/psychology and stat, would it look any better to take them independently?
No, if it fulfills the requirement, it fulfills the requirement. Med schools aren't going to look at that and say, oh, well, he took fewer courses and that's a problem. No, you've fulfilled the requirement and that's what they want to see. That being said, if you've done the bare minimum, that's also something that they see. If you've taken the majority of your science credits over the summer at your local state university instead of taking them here, they can see that. Have you fulfilled the minimum? Yes. Will you be competitive against everybody else that's applying? Maybe.
Yeah. All right, next question. If a student changes their mind about being pre-med, will taking those mentioned classes still be a chemistry minor?
If you take 5 courses in chemistry, you will get the chemistry minor. Whether or not you are pre-med, 5 courses equals a minor. I'd like to address changing your mind. As I said, a lot of people will take extra time even if they know that they're pre-med right when they come in. But some people maybe are thinking about it, maybe find that the courses are a little too hard right now, maybe think they're going in a different direction, or they come to medicine later for whatever reason. That's okay. I like to remind people, med schools aren't going anywhere. You can apply at any time. If you have taken all of your pre-medical coursework, I get a lot of calls from alumni who took all those courses but now need to gear up for the MCAT and get ready for the application process. I also get calls from alums who took some of them. What do they need to do next? There's lots of different options. Sometimes alums will take kind of a la carte 1 or 2 courses somewhere after they have graduated. Other times they will do what is called a post-bac program. There are different kinds of post-bacs to prepare you for medical school, so that is always an option. As I said, the medical schools aren't going anywhere, and I understand 1,000% the pressure that you feel to go into medical school right away and apply and get into the best one, and I understand that. But remember that you want to redefine success, and success is not only being happy with your career and happy with your education, but happy with everything else. If you need to take some extra time because you want to rush and you want to tent and you want to enjoy being 19 years old and at Duke, please do, and then come back to it later. Not too much fun. Again, I have to write those conduct letters, but absolutely enjoy yourself. Once you are on the medical school track, it's really, you are dedicating, and that's part of the interview process, you're basically dedicating the next 10 or so years of your life to this track. You've got 4 years of medical school, plus at least 3, if not more, years of residency and fellowship and everything like that. They want to know this is truly what you want to do, and you are ready for that path.
That's great advice. Let's switch gears a little bit. There were a couple of questions that asked specifically about which credits can be used for pre-med. So for example, AP, IB, all of those. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. You can use AP and IB credits for pre-med courses at most medical schools. For those of you that didn't hear earlier, there is a list on our website. We update it yearly that has all of the medical schools who do and do not accept certain AP credits. Again, do I guarantee that this is what it will be when you apply? Nope, because I don't make those decisions. Each medical school does for themselves. But you can take a look now and see, okay, my state medical school doesn't take this, or, oh, it always does. It takes all the APs. It's probably a good general rule that it may do that in the future. To know what your score counts for, go to the advising webpage as well as to the pre-med webpage, prehealth.duke.edu, and check out and see where your APs fall. I do apologize that sometimes I use the word pre-health and pre-med interchangeably. If you are not pre-med and you are looking at some of those other programs, please do not be offended and think that I don't include you. A good 90-something% of people that I work with are pre-med, and therefore that's where I gear a lot of the general information. But especially if you are looking at one of those other health professions, absolutely we have more information for you. So absolutely come and seek it out. And we apologize that it may not be what's out there all the time, but we have it, and we care about you.
All right, the next question asks, do we have to take statistics and calculus, or are calculus 1 and 2 sufficient?
All of this is on the course listings for pre-med. You should take statistics. You also, depending on your major, may or may not need to take calculus when you get here. Some people found that what they have taken with AP is enough, but it depends on what you want to major in, because some of the majors require a higher level of calculus. Some of them do not. There is a specific listing on, if you go through the advising website, there is more information about all of these specific questions, including, do I need to take more than Calc 1? Depends. Are you majoring in this? Are you majoring in that? Do you want to get the BS or the BA? All of those questions.
All right. We talked a little bit earlier about like the community service, clinical research. This student is asking, can hands-on clinical care include community service related to the medical field? And if so, what is the dividing line between community service and what is considered clinical experience?
That's a good question. Sometimes there is a dividing line and sometimes there isn't. When it comes to shadowing, shadowing is very clearly defined. Shadowing is hands-off. Shadowing is following. Something that you want to keep in mind is if you are doing more, are you trained to do that? When someone asks me if they shadowed, my first question is, did you touch a patient? No, then you probably shadowed. If you have physically touched a patient, you are probably doing more and you're doing something more hands-on, which is not a bad thing, but again, you want to make sure that you are certified, you are trained, you are under you are yourself a health professional or under a health professional's guidance. This is also something that I recommend to people. We have a whole section on it to look at about anything that you are doing that is international and you are doing a clinical experience. There are a lot of places that you pay to do clinical services overseas, a volunteerism, so to speak. I caution you as you look into some of these because a lot of them are just money making. They are not nonprofit organizations. Also, many of them do not adhere to the same standards that we would adhere to in the United States. Just because people are not American citizens does not mean that you get to do medical experiments on them and practice medicine on them without a license. So keep that in mind. Are you going to get proper training, etc.? If you do a program through Duke, such as a health-related Duke Engage, we adhere to those standards. If you are working with patients, if you are doing any kind of tests, etc., you have been trained how to do this. Now, kind of back to is there a definite distinction between clinical service and community service? Maybe, maybe not. If you have lots of service, such as many, many hours volunteering at Duke Hospital, that is great. That absolutely counts as your clinical service. But you should also have some additional community service outside of that. Community service can be anything that you're interested in. If you're an animal lover, volunteer at an animal shelter. If you are involved in other organizations, including Greek organizations, religious organizations that do community service, all of those hours and projects count as well.
Great. If you have any, we're getting close to time, so if you have any last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We'll try and get to them real quick. But Megan, are there any like last minute tips or advice that you would like to give these incoming folks
Absolutely. I think a couple of takeaways from this are, one, our website, prehealth.duke.edu. That's going to help you out. You do not need to meet with a pre-health or pre-med advisor before you register. In fact, we are very busy with the committee letters, so we will meet with you after you get here. There is information about picking which classes first thing. Like I said, most people will look for chemistry and or math, but that sometimes it's neither. It just depends what you're looking at. Another big takeaway is that you want to start thinking about at least the fact that most students will take at least one gap year. I'm not telling you you have to. I'm just telling you that it's a good possibility. It's sometimes good to include mom and dad in some of these discussions right from the beginning so that they know this as well. And finally, we will be meeting with you a couple of times. One, we will set up one-on-one meetings with students, with incoming freshmen, usually in kind of mid to late September. We want you to get here and get started and stop stressing, breathe, relax. You are not behind schedule by meeting with us in September. The other thing is that we will meet you first thing when you are here because we will be part of the orientation schedule. Many of you already have orientation on your calendar. We are going to be part of that on Friday, August 23rd at 9 a.m. We're going to meet with people in Baldwin Auditorium. For those of you who didn't catch that or didn't write it down, don't worry. It's going to be all over in the schedules and stuff for your orientation. But on Friday, August 23rd, 9 a.m., that is the pre-health orientation session. So I will be there. The rest of the staff will be there. You'll get to ask us questions and hear a lot of this information again. And it's a lot easier because we have slides. So you can see the things that I'm talking about. Take pictures of them with your phones, that kind of thing.
Yes. So not a shameless plug, or yeah, a shameless plug. You should check out the orientation session. Like Megan said, it'll be in your orientation schedule. It's not required, but it's strongly recommended if you're curious or want to know more. So yeah, thank you so much for asking all of your great questions. Thank you for bearing with us with our funky audio and this weird storm. It's actually sunny outside right now. I don't know what happened.
I can't imagine how humid it is. North Carolina weather is lovely, by the way.
There was literally hail when we started this webinar. It's sunny now. Anyways, thank you for bearing with us. Sorry that the audio got cut out a couple of times. We will be posting the recording of this on the New Student Programs YouTube channel. So, and we'll also drop it in the Facebook page once it's ready. So you'll be able to see it on the Facebook page or check out the YouTube channel in case you missed anything. And what else was I going to say? Oh, so our last webinar is coming up on July 17th, and that will be with folks from New Student Programs as well as International House. So as you get ready for your move to Duke in Durham, if you have any questions about orientation, move-in, pre-orientation, any of that stuff, be sure to tune in on July 17th because we'll be doing one of these to answer your questions. But if we somehow missed your question or didn't get to it, please reach out. Please send an email. Check out the website. There's tons of resources here at Duke, and we want to make sure that you have all of the answers that you need. So, yeah, thank you for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.